saying, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anybody can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. Where the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes.
And speaking of the science of life, do you have those cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Lane, I noticed from your book that last Thursday, when Mr. Worthing and Lord Shoreham were dining here, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Tell me, why in a bachelor's establishment do the servants invariably drink champagne? I ask merely for information.
I assume it's the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the wine is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage as demoralizing as all that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself, up to the present. I have only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know if I'm that much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage are decidedly lax. Really, if the lower orders can't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? It seems a class with absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, what brings you up to town?
Pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take a little light refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. Perfectly ridiculous.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance at one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd said you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business, sir.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's very romantic to be in love. There's nothing unromantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. I believe one is. Often. And then all the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I shall certainly try to forget the fact.
I can quite understand that, dear Algy. The divorce courts are specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no sense in speculating on that subject. Divorces were made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. The cucumber sandwiches are especially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all the time.
Yes, but she is my aunt. That's the bread and butter. Bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
You need not eat it as if you're going to eat it all. You behave as if you're married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't believe you ever will be.
What on earth do you mean?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think
That
it's
is
right.
nonsense.
Well, it isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up the whole question. Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone in the name of Cecily.
Could you bring the cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here?
Yes.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer a large reward. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
That's very mean of you, Ernest, I must say. Still, no matter. Well, now that I read the inscription inside, I find it isn't your cigarette case at all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentleman thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, I think it's absurd to have hard and fast rules about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
But this is not your cigarette case. This cigarette case is from a person called Cecily, and you've just said you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady, she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give me my cigarette case, Algy.
But why should your aunt, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, call herself Little Cecily? Little Cecily, her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter that an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that all aunts should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. Good heavens, just give me my case back.
But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Now, no objection to an aunt being a small aunt. Why an aunt, no matter what her size, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone by the name of Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've ever seen in my life. It's perfectly absurd. You're saying your name is not Ernest. It's on your cards. Look. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. And I shall keep this in case you ever try to deny that your name is Ernest. To me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town. And Jack in the country, and a cigarette case was given to me in the country.
But that doesn't explain why your small Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Now, come on, old boy, you might as well have the whole thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you sound exactly like a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
I thought that's what dentists always did. I might say now that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a bunburyist?
I shall explain to you the meaning of that incomparable expression when you are kind enough to reveal to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
There's nothing improbable about it at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, from motives of respect that you cannot possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly the place is not in Shropshire.
I thought as much. I've bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I'm not sure whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone does not conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were right out, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, old boy. Don't try it. Leave it to people who haven't been to university. They do it so well in the daily papers. Know what you are is a bunburyist. I always thought you were a bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
Well, you have invented a very useful younger brother in order that you might come up to London whenever you like. Well, I have invented a perfectly invaluable invalid called Bunbury in order that I might go down to the country whenever I choose. And Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight. For I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for over a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. Very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I have no intention of doing anything of the sort. First place, I dined there last Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, when I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family. I'm either sent down as no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know who she'll place me next to tonight. She'll place me next to Mary Farquhar. She always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. And that's not very nice. It's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women who flirt with their own husbands in London is quite scandalous. It looks so bad. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you're a bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about bunburying. I want to explain to you the rules.
I'm not a bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily's a little too interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
I think it would induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury is a very tedious time of it.
Oh, it's nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, she's the only girl I met in my life that I would marry. I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You don't seem to realise that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
My dear young friend, that is a theory that the French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home is proved in half the time.
Oh, for goodness sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's not easy to be anything nowadays. So much beastly competition about. Oh, that could be Aunt Augusta. Any relatives or creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes in order that you have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, will you dine with me at Willis's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together. Good afternoon, Mr. Worthing. How do you do?
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we're a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane,
Sir?
why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear it has turned quite gold with grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause? I, of course, cannot say. Anyhow, I have quite a treat for you tonight, dear Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman and so devoted to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I might have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
Great bore. Needless to say, a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I've had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange, Algernon. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, in my opinion, Algernon, it is high time that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. Oh, this shilly-shallying with the question is quite absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Ill health of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in ours. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take any notice, at least as far as any improvement in his ailments goes. Now, I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has practically said whatever that was they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I shall speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise that he'll be all right by Saturday. The music, of course, is a great difficulty. If one plays good music, then people don't listen. If one plays bad music, then people don't talk. But I'll run over the programme I've drawn up for you, if you'll just step into the next room for a moment.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. Now that is most thoughtful of you, and I am sure the programme will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People seem to think they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. German always sounds a thoroughly respectable language. And indeed, I believe it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I should certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I have ever met. Since I met you.
I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I've often wished, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the country pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Oh, my darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
With your name is Ernest.
I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Listen, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolen, I must say, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? Oh, no. There is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, are more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She will probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, the only really great name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe perhaps that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
Well, I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to save you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you. Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Well, yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. And while I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma.
In the carriage, Gwendolen. Gwendolen?
Yes, Mamma.
The carriage. You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age at which to be married. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to marry should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. You touch it, and the bloom is gone. The modern theory of education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and might lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Oh, that is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I own a house in the country, with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who really make anything from it.
A house in the country? How many bedrooms? Oh, that is a point that can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoilt nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. No, I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability and character. What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I knew there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the style?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I don't really have any. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us or come in the evening at any rate. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents still living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose two looks like carelessness. Now, who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost both my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents had lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was, well, I was found.
Found?
Yes. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing. Because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did the charitable gentleman with a ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a handbag. A somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And where did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this perfectly ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As to the locality in which this handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has probably indeed already done so before now. But it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire some relations as soon as possible and to make a definite effort to produce at least one parent, vying for sex, before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I can possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any time. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What can it possibly have to do with me? You can hardly expect that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good afternoon, Mr. Worthing. Oh.
Good afternoon. Oh, for goodness sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Did it go all right, old boy? Oh, you don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know, it's a way she has. She's always refusing people. It's most unkind of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. Don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm fairly sure she is one. Anyway, she's a monster, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in this way before you.
Oh, I love hearing my relatives abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relatives are simply a tedious pack of people, having the remotest knowledge of how to live, or the smallest instinct of when to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
On my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, that's it.
Is that clever?
Well, it's perfectly phrased, and as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. This thing is an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness there were a few fools left.
Oh, there are.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
Oh, fools. About the clever people, of course.
Fools.
Did you, tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a sweet, innocent girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty and to someone else if she is plain.
Well, that is nonsense.
But what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of Ernest. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary. It's a sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say severe chill.
You're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that sort?
Of course it is.
Very well then. My poor brother is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Isn't Miss Cardew rather too fond of your brother Ernest? Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Well, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I'd rather like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Did you tell Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
One doesn't blurt these things out. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they will be calling each other sisters.
Women only do that once they've called each other a lot of other things. Now, for me to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and change. I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Shall we go round to the theatre?
Oh no, I loathe this.
Or perhaps we should go to the club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
We could trot round the Empire at 10.
Well, I can't bear looking at things. It is so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
Well, it's awfully hard work doing nothing. Still, I don't mind hard work as long as there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But though she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your nature makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address, at the Albany, I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House. Woolton. Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, would require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Oh, thanks, I have already.
You may also ring the bell.
I may show you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will show Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry.
Yes.
Tomorrow, then, I think I'll go Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
I'll probably not be back until Monday. If you could put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes.
I hope tomorrow is a nice day, then.
It never is, sir.
Then you are the perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a splendid intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious about friend Bunbury's health, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Well, that is nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily? Cecily? Surely such a utilitarian task as the pruning of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours. Especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it, page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town.
But dear Uncle Jack is so terribly serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanour is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety of that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I do wish Uncle Jack would let that unfortunate young man, his brother, come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know, geology and German and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I don't think even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to record all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it also chronicles the things that haven't happened and the things that couldn't possibly have happened. I'm certain memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Maudie sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you, Miss Prism? How clever of you. But I hope it didn't end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. Well, that is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it does seem very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mismade. Now to your work, Charles. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Oh, Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism.
Oh, Miss Prism.
I trust you are well.
She was just complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to take a short stroll with you through the garden, Dr. Chasuble.
I have mentioned nothing about a headache, Cecily.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that, and not my German, when the rector came in.
Oh, I hope, Cecily, that you are not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
Oh, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically, broad beads. I suppose Mr. Worthing has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, indeed. He likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not like one of those who lose their lives, not like his brother, who is so uncertain. But I must not detain Miss Prism and her pupil any longer.
Miss Prism, you can call me Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from one of the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at the evening's on.
I think, dear Dr. Chasuble, I will take that walk with you after all. I find I have a headache and the walk might do it good.
Pleasure, Miss Prism, pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee, you may admit it, is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy. horrid geography. Horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station, miss. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him that Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss, he seemed very much disappointed. But when I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden, he said he was most anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. You'd better speak to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I'm rather frightened. I'm afraid he will look the same as everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not at all little. Indeed, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, you must not think I'm wicked, cousin Cecily. I'm not really wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a most inexcusable manner. I do hope that you haven't been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, of course I have been rather reckless.
I'm rather glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own school.
I don't think you should be so proud of that. Although I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter being here with you.
But I don't understand why you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
It's a great disappointment to me. I'm obliged to go out by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment I'm anxious to miss.
You miss it anywhere but in London?
Well, no, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business arrangement if one is to maintain any sense of the beauty of life. But I do think you should wait until Uncle Jack returns. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He has gone to buy your outfit.
I wouldn't let Jack choose my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think he'll need neckties. He's sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday evening that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh well. The reports I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
But are you good enough for it?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not that. Which is why I would like you to reform me. You might make that your mission, cousin Cecily.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time this afternoon.
Well, would you remind my reforming myself this afternoon?
That's rather quixotic of you. But I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
Well, that is because I'm hungry.
But how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is embarking on an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Maréchal Niel.
I'd rather have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest thing I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
Well, then they're a snare that every sensible man should like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Oh, you are too much a man, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is probably why the primitive church did not last up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
Oh, no married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I have been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can't always be counted on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I speak horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is dear Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the school.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing.
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Perhaps this garb of woe, dear Mr. Worthing, does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
His life of leisure.
Dead.
Ernest dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he profits by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolences. The consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Oh, very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No. He died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
Paris? Oh, I fear that hardly betokens any very great seriousness at the end. You will no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction on Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral. It was a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
That reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen, all right? I mean, of course, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the lower classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was he not, unmarried?
Oh, yes, quite unmarried.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear Doctor. I'm very fond of children. No, the fact is, I would like to be christened myself. This afternoon, if you don't have anything better to do.
Well, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
Well, I don't remember anything about it. Of course, if you think I'm a little too old now, or...
Not at all. Sprinkling, or indeed the immersion of adults, is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary. Or indeed, I think advisable. Is so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 other similar ceremonies to perform at the same time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter, a very hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened with other babies. It would be childish. Wouldn't 5:30 do?
Admirably. Admirably. And now, dear Mr. Willing, I will not intrude any longer on the House of Sorrow. I really beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials often prove to be blessings in disguise.
This seems to me to be a blessing of the most obvious kind.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I'm so pleased to see you. But what terrible clothes you've got on. Do go and change those.
Child.
Uncle Jack, whatever is the matter? Oh, do look happy. You look as if you had the toothache, and I have such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
What?
He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. Surely you couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. Now I'm going to fetch him out, and you are going to shake hands with him, Uncle Jack.
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden appearance to me is extremely distressing.
I don't know what it all means. I think it perfectly absurd. Brother John, good heavens!
I have come down from town to say how sorry I am for all the trouble I have given you, and I intend to lead a better life in future.
Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing would incline me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone, you know. Why, Ernest has been telling me all about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he visits so often. Now, surely there must be much good in anyone who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Bunbury? He's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury in his terrible state of health.
Well, he's no right to talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Well, of course, I admit all the faults were on my side, but I must say I think Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially as this is the first time I've been here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never!
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation. I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel! You have no right to Bunbury here. I don't allow it.
I've put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, so that's all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and placed it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a very large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Oh, yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
Well, I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures to the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You're perfectly ridiculous in them. Why don't you go and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying with you in your house for a week as a gift. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying with me for a week or anything else as a guest. You've got to leave. By the 4:05 train.
Well, I shan't leave for as long as you're in mourning. That would be unkind. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it most unfriendly.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress, and with such little result.
But at any rate, it's better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
It's ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence here in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to leave by the 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bummering, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Well, I think it's been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go to make arrangements for another bummering. Here she is.
Oh. I nearly came back to prune the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to send the dog cart for me.
Or is he going to take you on a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part.
Yes, it's a very painful parting.
It's always painful to part from a person whom one has known such a brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary lapse is more than anyone can bear.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman. For 5 minutes.
Yes.
Cecily, I hope I won't offend you if you allow me to state quite openly and frankly that I think you are the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will enter your remarks into my diary.
You keep a diary, Cecily. I'd love to read it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is merely a very young girl's own record of her thoughts and impressions, and subsequently made for publication. I hope when it is in volume form you will order a copy. But don't stop. I love to take down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. Do go on, I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one must speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I gazed upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
Oh, I don't think you should say wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come back next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying until next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. Why, we have already been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
It will be 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And any man who is much talked about is always very attractive, for one feels there is something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me. I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of last April. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to settle the matter once and for all. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you. This dear old tree here. The next day, I got this little ring in your name. And this is the bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
You have wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I give for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But, my dear Cecily, I never wrote you any letters.
You hardly need remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I always wrote 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do let me read them.
Oh, no, that would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote after I broke off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course, on the 22nd of May. You may see the entry in the diary if you like. Today I broke off my engagement to Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing, Cousin Cecily. I'm very hurt indeed that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly be a serious engagement if it weren't broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Yes, of course. With a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You won't break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think that I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Please don't laugh at me, darling, but it's always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone with the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity the poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Well, any name you choose. Algernon, for instance.
Oh, I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own dear, sweet, loving little darling. I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name was Algie?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might even admire your character. But I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a very learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business. I shan't be gone more than half an hour.
Considering we have been engaged for the last 3 months, and I only met you this afternoon for the first time, I think it is pretty hard of you to leave me for such a long period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I shall be back in no time.
What an impetuous young man he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on most urgent business, Miss Fairfax states.
Well, isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
And Mr. Worthing went off in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here.
Yes.
I'm sure Mr. Worthing will be back shortly.
Yes.
And you can fetch some tea.
Oh, yes.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack and his philanthropic work in London. I don't much like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It's very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much when we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a suitable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glass?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no. I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
No, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It's strange he never told me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. Sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I'm bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help wishing you were a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, please do, Gwendolen. I think that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as impossible for him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be entirely unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
But it is not Ernest who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never told me that he had a brother.
I am afraid to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. Now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Oh, quite sure. In fact, I am to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, my dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is bound to chronicle the event next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I think you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, please do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can say, Gwendolen, if it were to cause you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since proposing to you, Ernest has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my poor boy has got himself into, I will not reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into engagement? How dare you? This is no time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual?
Yes, as usual.
many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, quite a few. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Oh, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Flowers are as common here as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody can exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers are calling agricultural depression, is it not? I gather the aristocracy are suffering greatly from it at present. It's become almost an epidemic amongst them, so I have been told. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition, and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my boy, poor, trusting, innocent boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I met you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
But it seems to me I have been trespassing on your valuable time. I'm sure you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighbourhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
What, to dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
But I knew there must have been some mistake, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack?
Oh! Here is Ernest!
Sweet one.
A moment. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
What young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolen.
Of course not! What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must have been some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Oh, you are called Algernon.
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My poor wronged Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I should like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I should like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it was very painful to be reduced to this situation. It's the first time in my life that I've been forced to speak the truth, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Have you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I am afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
This is not a pleasant situation for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly situation is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes, the perfectly wonderful Bunbury. It's true. It's the most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
We have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that's absurd. A man has a right to Bunbury wherever he chooses. Every serious Bunbury knows that.
Serious Bunburys? Good heavens.
Well, one has to be serious about something if one wants any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy. And a very good thing, too.
Brother's looking a little off-colour, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to run up to town quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And that's not a bad thing, either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, innocent, simple girl like that quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she's my ward.
I can see no excuse at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, and thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to her, that is all. I love her.
I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your ever marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much likelihood of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it were my business, I wouldn't speak about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins when we're in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would get on my cups. No, one should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
Since it's perfectly heartless, you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
Well, when I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. When I'm in very great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse absolutely everything, except food and drink. At present, I'm eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake. I happen not to like tea cake.
Good heavens, can't a man eat his own muffins in his own garden?
You just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That was a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't ask me to go without having had my dinner. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does. Except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've made arrangements with Dr. Chazell to be christened at 4:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chazell to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally would take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I was ever christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You have been christened.
Well, yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Well, quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're quite sure of your having been christened, I think it most dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you quite unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that somebody quite close to you was very nearly carried off in Paris this week with a severe chill.
You said yourself that a severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making such wonderful improvements.
That is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
You are at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins. No.
I don't like tea cake.
No, you do that. Why do you allow tea cake to be served to your guests? What ideas of hospitality you have?
Algernon, I've already asked you to go. Why don't you go? I don't want you here.
Well, I haven't quite finished my tea. Besides, there's still one muffin left.
they did not follow us at once into the house seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame there.
They have been eating muffins. Well, that looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They are approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing left to do.
Dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very important to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
Certainly seems a satisfactory answer, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that doesn't affect the wonderful beauty of his reply.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you give to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order to have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Now is not the moment for German scepticism. Their answers seem to me most satisfactory, particularly Mr. Worthing's. His seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than satisfied with what Mr. Moncrief has said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then, you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. But which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An admirable idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon.
For me, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have motives of physical attributes to which us women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here and sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once on a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question I would consider it wrong. You, however, will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter will cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed upon all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, Algernon. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Well, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? He was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
I mean, Aunt Augusta, that Bunbury was found out. Bunbury's doctors found out that he could not live. That is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have shown remarkable confidence in the opinion of his physician. However, I am glad that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. Now we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury. May I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is something peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that goes on seems to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some questions would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, may I ask, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I really desire information. Until yesterday, I was not aware there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Gervase Park, Dorking, Surrey, and Sporran, Fifeshire, NB.
Oh, that sounds not at all unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I've carefully preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They are open to your inspection.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby and Markby.
Markby, Markby and Markby. Oh, a firm of the highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
That's very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I've also in my possession, you will be glad to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, confirmation, vaccination, and the measles. Both the German and the English variety.
Oh, a life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I myself am not in favour of premature experiences. Oh, young Gwendolen, the time fast approaches for our departure. There is not a moment to be lost. Oh, as a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, may I ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune?
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000, and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present age have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with age. We live, I'm afraid, in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear. Sweet child, your dress is sadly simple. Your hair almost as nature might have left it. However, we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a marvellous effect in a brief space of time. I remember recommending one once to young Lady Lancing, and after 3 months, her own husband didn't know her.
6 months, nobody knew her.
Turn round, dear child. No, the side view is what I want. Ah, yes. Just as I thought. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends upon how the chin is worn, and they're worn very high at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Miss Cardew is the prettiest girl I've ever seen, and I don't give tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. However, I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamt for a moment of letting that stand in my way. Well, I suppose I had better give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Oh, thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may kiss me, Cecily.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Now, I think the marriage had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I am not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage. I think it's never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell. This engagement is out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say, ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? It's impossible. He's a Canterburygian.
There can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Perrier Jouet, brew 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded, in the course of the afternoon, of alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was well aware from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself, yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, dear. How old are you?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I admit to 20 at evening parties.
Oh, you're quite right to make some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I do not think, after all, your guardian's consent is a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but it is only fair to tell you that, according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not become legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be any grave objection. A 35 is a most attractive attractive age. Indeed, London society is full of women of the highest birth who, of their own free choice, have remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point to my own knowledge. She has remained 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, and that was many years ago. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. And there will be a large accumulation of property.
Audrey, could you wait till I was 35?
Well, of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I'm afraid I can't wait all that time. I hate to wait even 5 minutes for anyone. It makes me so cross. I am not punctual myself, I know. But I do like punctuality in others. And to wait, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
What is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, since Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she's 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show an impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. As soon as you give your consent to my marriage to Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, could choose for himself. Oh, come, dear. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment upon the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir? Is this not somewhat premature?
These gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Your uncle would be highly displeased if he learnt this was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Are there to be no christenings at all then this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, Dr. Chasuble, there will be much practical value.
Oh, I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. But, as your present mood appears to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the Puritan that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you say Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It's obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am the celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has for the last 3 years been Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must speak to her. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the rectory, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism. Where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism. You left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, after the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, The perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever burned onto my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had with me also a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place the manuscript of work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. During a moment of mental abstraction, for which I never can forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
Where did you put the handbag?
Oh, do not ask me, Mr. Worthy.
Miss Prism, your answer is of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you placed the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They're hardly considered the thing.
Well, Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
It is a most unpleasant noise. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I do wish he would come to some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible, and it lasts.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh, here on the lining, a stain caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I forgot that in an extravagant mood I had had them placed there. Well, the bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it restored to me so unexpectedly. But it has been a great inconvenience being without you for these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a severe blow. After all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there has been some error. Here is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I do have a brother after all. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you ever doubt it? I had a brother. Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you have never behaved to me like a brother in your life.
Not until today, I admit. I've tried my best, however, I was out of practice.
My own But what am I? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
Oh, what a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be settled. Aunt Augusta? A moment. At the time when Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I had been christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
For being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the General's Christian name was, but I have no doubt that he had one. He was eccentric, but that was only in later years, and that was as the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
Dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. And he died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals. Malum, Maxbon, Magley. What ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. I always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now. The General was called Ernest. I knew I had a reason for disliking that name.
My own Ernest. I felt from the birth that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a dreadful thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
It is sure. Oh, Frederick! At last!
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.